contacts in Japan, you've got a real estate rock star, you've got a real estate brokerage, maybe you have a developer who has listings in Japan, please go to that website and nominate that person for us. All right? This is how we as a company grow our company, by helping the company find talent. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I've met my now sponsor and have been my sponsor for 6.5 years now through a LinkedIn message. She messaged me and she says, Tom, are you looking for, if I can show you an opportunity that's going to radically change the face of real estate, especially in the way you and I get compensated, would you be open-minded? I'll never forget that because I leveraged that email statement to recruit my first, 60, 70 agents, the same script, okay? And she persisted. I said no, and I said no again, and I said no again. And then finally, she got to me, and I watched that video. Her husband, Super Dave, was the VP of growth for EXP. If this man has the highest level of belief in our company, he was there pretty much from day one when it was very hard to open states, never mind countries, okay? Dave's always been here for me whenever I needed him for a three-way call. He and I are not in the same revenue share line, but he gives and he gives and he gives. We've had the pleasure of attending their wedding in person, as well as the first virtual wedding in the metaverse. Super Dave and Traci Gagnon, come on up.
I am Traci.
And I'm Super Dave.
We are honored to be here with you guys, that's for sure. And we're going to talk to you guys about our first... Oh, thank you. Yeah, can you hear me okay? No. Okay.
Try it now, Traci.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Here.
Testing 1, 2.
Here, I'll try it.
There you go, Merry Christmas.
All right, there you go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're here to talk to you guys about our first $17,305,019.20 with eXp Realty. And actually, our numbers are higher than that. This, I think, only goes back to like 2017 or something like that. But it's a really good start. How many of you guys think that's a pretty good number? Yeah, absolutely. So Super Dave Gagnon has been in real estate since Reagan was in office. He ran 7 Keller Williams franchises. He was, as Tom said, the original head of growth for eXp. A lot of people in this company say that they are the original OG. They are not telling the truth. This is the original OG of eXp. He's agent number 123 with this amazing company. Can we give this guy a big hand? Absolutely. And he's had pretty much every award in the industry and has one of the largest teams within eXp Realty. So Dave, why don't you tell everybody how eXp found you?
Well, I got a phone call from a guy that was not in my phone, and he started telling me about this company that he was looking to expand on the East Coast of the United States. And I looked in the MLS to check out the company. It did not exist in the state that I was building offices. It did not exist in the state that I lived, and I said, thank you, I'm not interested. I'm with the best company on the planet, which was KW at the time. We hung up, but I saved his information on my phone. About 6 months later, my phone rings, and it's Jason Guessing. And I go, hi, Jason. And he goes, yeah, Dave. Dave Gagnon, hey, how you doing? I'm just calling back to see if you changed your mind. And I said, Jason, thank you so much for the call. No, thank you. And he asked me this question. I want you to write this down. He said, David, I'm not a professional recruiter. You obviously are. What would you say to someone that you wanted to be in business with, but they weren't listening? And I thought for a second. I said, Jason, I would tell them that they should do their due diligence and know what they're saying yes or no to before they say yes or no. And there was a pause, and Jason said, yeah, that. So I closed myself for the first meeting. And so I agreed to meet him. 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, you can give me all the nuts and bolts, and I can say no. So I gave him the courtesy. I met him at Panera, halfway between our houses, and go ahead, give it to me. And he started telling me the model, and I started to get worked up. I started to get riled up because it couldn't be true. He started to pull out the stats. Then we started talking about Glenn and the vision and going public and all this other stuff. And I started getting roiled up because my life was going to change. I would have to learn how to compete against this, and so I wanted to dig in more. 2.5 hours later, I stood up and I said, I'm in, I'll resign tomorrow. And Jason said, you can't resign, we're not even open in your state. And I said, that's a problem that we'll fix together. I'll resign tomorrow because I cannot recruit one more agent to an inferior model. And the next day I resigned.
Great story, that's for sure. There we go. And you want to tell anybody about your numbers here?
Yeah, so who's been with EXP more than a year and has 0 people? Okay. Everyone else in here is better than me. In year 1, I had 0. In year 2, I had 3. In year 3, I added 1 more. I was 4 wide after 3 years. Who in the room is doing better than that? Most of you guys are doing better. You will be bigger than I was. It took me 4.5 years to get out of my corporate job. I was the director of growth. I was helping everyone else recruit. I was opening in every other state besides the 14 that we were opening when I got here. I worked like a dog. It was 60, 80 hours a week. And then I started watching people like Scott and Tracy, and they were making the money that I wanted to make. I went to Jason, I said, I can't work for corporate anymore. I have to go build for my family. And I transitioned out, and Dave took over, and he took us to the next level. I took us from 200 agents to 6,000. David took us from 6,000 to about 80,000. You're the man. And this is my beautiful wife, Tracy. She owned 5 Century 21 brokerages. So if you're talking to a broker owner, she understands the pain. She has written books. She's been on stage. She's been on television. She is absolutely amazing. She actually has the first ever EXPI tattoo. And if we're ever at the pool, you'll see it. She got it when she reached $1 million earned in EXP revenue share.
Vincent, you're next. I want to be there when Vincent gets to yeah. And so how EXP found me? So I, like Dave said, and I have been around the block a long time, but I most recently came from KW, and Rob Flick was my KW sponsor, and I got a call from him, and he wanted me to take a look at this new real estate company, and I said no. How many of you said no the first time? Yeah. Because I was exhausted. I was a huge producer, top luxury listing agent for my KW office, had 54 listings. But when I joined KW and I had named Rob as my sponsor, that decision did not go well. The first brokerage that I interviewed with basically said, no, you're not having somebody out of town be your sponsor. This is who your sponsor is going to be. And I felt like, well, if they'll try to screw over Rob, they'll try to screw over me. So I went to a smaller KW office, and it was a great tragedy from day one. How many of you have ever transferred brokerages? It was a great tragedy from day one. Yeah, so I wasn't interested at all. But he said, well, Tracy, I ran your numbers because I was recruited here globally for KW. And I never saw checks big enough to even make, like, car payments. I mean, they were some months, $12, $13. And he said, I ran your numbers, and compared to what you'd be making at KW to EXP, it's about 40 to 1. And he had my attention. So he said, go to meet Gene Frederick. So I met Gene Frederick for lunch, and that was pretty much game over. But he offered to send me to convention. And he told me to check out our cloud campus. So I went to our cloud campus, and I had been investing in cloud technology, so I was real interested. And the person that greeted me was a good-looking guy with a red man bun, and his name was Logan. And I told him, hey, I'm thinking about joining EXP. And he said, oh, you need to talk to my dad, the head of growth for EXP. So Dave is literally the first person that was actually with EXP that I ever met. And we met for the first time, avatar to avatar. And then I met in person Gene Frederick. And then Gene offered to pay my way to EXPCon. And the first person I talked to there was Jason Gessing. And I was in. all in 100%. So that's my origin story. And right now I have 6,705 EXP agents in my organization. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that that's more than anybody else that's here. So if you want to know some of the secrets to really scale, I'd be honored and happy to help you out with that. So your frequency is what you frequently see. So one of the big things that I want to impress upon you guys is this great quote by Alex Hormozi. The #1 predictor of success long term is the zip code you're born in. Now, I grew up in my house faced a laundromat, but we were in the most expensive zip code in our city. And so I went to school with all the rich kids. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the decision that my parents made. And I will tell you that if you want to make more money in your real estate business, you may need to upgrade your zip code. For a lot of you, the secret to your next step is changing where you live. And guess what? That's the secret to your friends and your clients' success as well. If you love your friends, if you love your family, if you love your clients, pick up the phone, take a picture of this, and say, hey, I was at a conference, and I heard this amazing statistic. I'm wondering if maybe you might be open-minded to looking at a new zip code. And every extra year that you grew up in a better neighborhood, a neighborhood with better schools, with better access to opportunities, the better that you end up doing in the long run. What we do is so incredibly important. So now I'd like to talk with you guys about March 2nd, the day everything changed. Sweetie, tell everybody about where we live.
So this is the Hammock Beach Resort, and I want to thank EXP. This is because of Glenn Sanford and Jason Gessen's opportunity to Dave Gagnon. We live on the 6th floor in this building. That's a $1.3 million condo the day I bought it, and I bought it cash because I had enough EXP stock sitting on the sideline. And since I was diligent at building my business through my frontline and my partners, I was making about $50,000 a month. I did not need to work another day in my life. My freedom number was $25,000 a month. So if you were at double your freedom number, what would you do? I retired. I stayed a little active so I could help some of my people that were showing up to get help, but I was golfing 6, maybe 7 days a week. So we decided we were golfing, and we got to the 7th hole, and I was a little irritable, and I'll let Tracy take over from there.
Yeah, that's an understatement. And in all the time that Dave and I have been together, we've only quit a round of golf one time unless there was bad weather, and it was that day. And he said, look, I'm hungry, I'm tired, it's cold, because, you know, it's March, and it was probably 70 degrees, so by Florida, that's cold. He said, let's go get something to eat. So we went and had a burger at that building right there, beautiful Atlantic Grill, and we stood up afterwards, and Dave said, did you hear that noise? And every ounce of his life energy disappeared from his body, and I was standing next to a wax figure. And I picked up my phone and I said, my husband is having a stroke. I knew with certainty that that's what was happening because my father had had a stroke standing in front of me when I was 17. And that is a look that you remember forever. I screamed after that point. By the grace of God, the waiter was a paramedic, and there was a gynecologist in the restroom. Or in the restaurant. So, yeah. So by the time that the paramedics got there, they had his vitals and all that kind of stuff, and we kind of got started. And the prognosis was terrible. He was paralyzed on half of his body, couldn't speak, and the doctors just kind of told me to settle in for a long haul.
I've only shared this publicly one other time, so forgive me. So I have the stroke. You don't know what's going on, and they did surgery. They went into my brain through an artery to get the clot out of my brain. And so I wake up, and as I'm waking up, I'm coming out of the surgery. If you've ever been under general anesthesia, you're in that spot, and I'm imagining I'm on this wide surfboard. It is a comfortable surfboard. I'm in warm water, and it's gently rocking back and forth. And the water's lapping up on my side, and I feel total comfort. Now think about all of my goals and all of my dreams have been achieved. I'm financially free. I'm retired. I'm playing golf every day. I could not be more at peace. I feel the surfboard slide to the left. That's where I had the stroke. And I start to slide under the warm water. And it felt warm and welcoming, and I was totally at peace. And I truly believe in that moment, if my life was over, I had a good life. I was blessed. And I jerked back to the right, and I sat up, and I was back. Maeve, my 4th grandchild, was not born yet. I was not going to miss out on that. My son Logan was getting married. I wasn't going to miss out on that. I have people to pay forward. I wasn't going to miss out on that. When I was able to speak with my wife, I said, honey, can I please go back to work 3 days a week? Because I want to give back. We spent the next 6 months seeing every specialist that we could, getting treatment, getting rehab. I couldn't even speak properly. I couldn't think a thought and have it come out my mouth the right way. So for 6 months, my wife was not engaged in her business. I was not engaged in my business. My income went up 40%. Here's what I want you to understand. If I had a job working for someone else and I couldn't show up for work for 6 months, what would have happened to my family? If I was running my own sales team and they loved me and they were loyal to me, what would have happened to my sales team if I didn't show up for 6 months? If I was running my own independent brokerage and I had hundreds of loyal agents who didn't care if they were paying me too much money, if I didn't show up for 6 months, what would have happened to the business that I built? When we talk about leverage, you have to understand leverage at the highest level. Glenn Sanford was sitting on our couch a few years ago, and I said, Glenn, how much is too much? He said, Dave, what do you mean? I said, some of these people are starting to make an awful lot of money. What's the cap? And I was hoping it would be at least a number that was $1 million or above. I was expecting some kind of cap, but no one had made that kind of money. But some leaders were starting to move towards that. And as someone who worked for a corporate, I wanted to make sure that we were taking care of things. And Glenn said this, Dave, I'm happy to pay every penny of half the money that comes in to whoever earns it. He says there is no cap. There is no maximum to it. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, look at what we've done with this company. At that point, we were 6,000, 7,000 agents, and I had done a good job. And I was thinking, Glenn leveraged the heck out of me. I got paid a fair amount, and I built something truly magnificent. Boy, did I get leverage. And then I started thinking, man, did I leverage Glenn? Look at what Glenn had for a model. Look at all the support I get. He has thousands of staff that support me and my people. This is leverage, leverage. This is the only company I've ever seen with the kind of leader who never has regrets on what they're paying someone else to get what they wanted to build. We are in the best place on the planet. The message I want you to understand, and I want you all to do this. You all know at least one team leader who's not here. You know at least one broker who's not here. I want you to have this conversation with them. Michael, what would happen to your brokerage if you were unable to show up for 6 months? There's a true answer in that. I want you to stay on that conversation until they tell you the truth. Then I want you to say, my friend Super Dave was unable to show up for 6 months and his income went from 600 to over 800,000 because of a different model. I want to share it with you. And they should be open-minded. We are changing lives. Tom was talking, and Dick were talking about their partner who we're taking care of their family because he took care of his family by building a legacy and having 500 people that can be loved and nurtured. And think about the leverage that family has. Guys, you have more leverage in your little finger than the largest company out there that thinks they can copy a model and make something cheaper, rip something off, and pretend they're the same. They're not the same. We have something unique, and we have something special.
So 4 days after Dave's massive stroke and being told that it would be months in hospitals and rehab, this man lived up to his name and walked out of the hospital. His neurologist called it a miraculous recovery. His speech therapist called it, I love this term, spontaneous healing. I was raised Southern Baptist, so we just call it a good old-fashioned miracle. So he really is super Dave. Yeah. Okay. And then the next day, played 17 holes at the Conservatory Golf Course, which probably was not my smartest decision to let that happen. Okay. And then a few months later, Dave and I got married. So we again met for the very first time, avatar to avatar. And so whenever we announced that we were getting married, Jason Gessing wrapped his arms around us and says, you got to get married in the metaverse. And we were like, oh, that sounds great. So he walked us over to talk to the guy that was running the metaverse. And he said, well, we have a disco in the metaverse. We could turn that into a wedding chapel. And so they did. So ladies and gentlemen, we are the very first couple to ever get married in the metaverse. And our wedding has been covered by more than 6,000 news stories on every continent except Antarctica. And I have a 41-second compilation, but as soon as I hit the button here, it'll start. So let's get rocking and rolling on that. That's the picture of the wedding right there. The live wedding and then the metaverse wedding. Glenn Sanford and the host of cast were there. So anyway, here's some of the news stories. Full story cover in the New York Times.
Now, nuptials are taking a big leap into the future as folks are getting married in the metaverse. To watch the marriage of, looks like Jeff Bezos and, I want to say, the mom from the Fisher-Price set.
We want to show you, though, how one couple, Traci and Dave, they took their ceremony to the next level, actually into a different universe, the metaverse.
They held a traditional real-life wedding in front of 100 guests in Manchester, New Hampshire on September 4th.
We've never seen before, at least not one like this. Traci and Dave Gagnon tied the knot in the metaverse. So a meta marriage. Very good. It was a meta marriage. We love it. We love it.
Yeah, you can Google Gagnon metaverse wedding and see all kinds of really hysterical stories. So I'm curious, Dave, there's our wedding chapel that used to be a cute cathedral. Okay, I'm curious, any regrets?
Yeah. So when I came to EXP, there was one name that kept jumping into my head. He was someone I knew from KW, and he was one of the most respected persons that I knew. And I knew if I could get him to take a look at it, he would love it, and he would help transform our company. But I kept thinking, you know what? He owns some offices. He owns a region. He's Mr. KW. He was a master faculty. I never called him. I was too intimidated to call someone of that power, and so I didn't. But one of my favorite agents, Carrie, was in South Carolina, I think, and she had a friend that worked on their team that moved to Texas, and so I helped recruit Carrie into EXP as part of the first brokerage that folded in, and then she wanted me to talk to her friend in Texas, and I did, and she was so excited. She went to her team leader, this guy, and the team leader wanted to talk to us. So I did. His name was Gene Frederick. So I'm not saying I recruited Gene Frederick. I'm saying he's here because I talked to him, and he then understood enough that he would meet with Jason and Glenn, and now he's here, and he has literally transformed this company. So who do you know that you think is too big, too strong, too powerful, too loyal to another brand that they intimidate you? Stop it. Call them now and get them in front of the right people.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. Love you.
Hey, Traci, I have one more thing that I want to do. And so I've never done this from stage before. I've only done this in serene settings like Grand Canyon or a golf course or a beach. But there was a question asked earlier today, and it was, what am I? I am blank. And I want to give you my answer, because when he asked that question this morning, my brain knew what I was, and I just want to share that with you and see if you might be the same. So rule number one, I know for a fact that my God creates no junk. I also know this. There are times where I feel less than. I'm not as good a husband as I want to be. I'm not as good a dad as I want to be. I'm not as good a leader as I want to be. And it makes me feel less than, and that starts to weigh heavy on me. And then I think that my Lord doesn't make any junk. And so I know I am magnificent. So this is the exercise I want you to do. And I don't need the mic for this. I want you to understand that you are magnificent. I want you to declare it, and when you do, I want the love of the universe to fill you. I am magnificent!
Magnificent. All right, our next speaker, I interviewed for a salesperson's position 10 years ago, a decade ago. And, you know, as broker owners, some of you may know, you know, you make judgments, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. This young lady was 2 years in the country